Windy may be best known for their inboard powered sports cruisers, but a lot of people forget that they've been in the market for fast outboard powered sports boats for much longer than people remember. In fact, pretty much around the turn of the century, they had a boat called the Windy Oceancraft 761, and then in 2014, they followed that up with the Draco 27 RS. Now this boat here is the brand new Windy SR28 CC. Now it uses the same hull as that Draco RS, which was always a really fine handling, good performing hull, but it's got a completely different deck and layout, which to me looks a lot more promising. There's more space on board, there's more practicality, and there's even a little cabin. Now we are going to show you all of that, and we're also going to take it out and give you a thorough test. But first thing to know is that prices for this start at £135,000 ex VAT, but in this particular spec, with the hardtop, with the 300 horsepower Yamaha engine and lots of nice features and functions, it comes to about £193,000 including VAT. Now that's quite a lot of money for a 28-foot boat, but hopefully it will have all those usual Windy traits of high performance, good fuel efficiency and top-notch build quality. But we're going to take it out and see if it delivers on all those things. My name is Hugo Andreae, you're watching Motorboat and Yachting. Let's go boating. We've come out to Studland Bay to see how the hull copes, and we've got a good breeze going on here. It's got to be probably a force 4, we've got a nice bit of a swell, so it should be a good test of what this hull is capable of. But first let's just see what the performance is like. We've got this 300 horsepower Yamaha outboard engine, and it is possible you can have twins as well. You can have up to two 200 horsepower, but with a single 300 should be a nice balance of fuel efficiency, performance, and fairly entertaining handling, we hope. So let's see what it'll do. Okay, bring the revs up. Oh, it's a proper induction roar as that starts to pick up speed. 4,000 RPM, 20 knots. There's more to come. We've got 30 knots at 5,000. Let's go all the way down. 5.5. 35 knots, trim it up a little bit. 36, 37, okay, just about 37 to 38 knots. Now, we've got zip wake automatic trim tabs on this, and that's helping to correct the boat a little bit. They work pretty well most of the time. You've just got to make sure that you trust in them and give them a little bit of a time to adjust. I think what can happen sometimes is you think it's going to adjust quicker than it does, and then you steer in or steer away. But actually, if you just learn to trust it, they perform very well. So we've got about 37, 38 knots. Let's see how it runs at a sort of steady 20-25 and have a look at fuel consumption. Okay, just bringing it up to... So ease back a little bit. We're doing 28 knots now. Bring it back a little bit. So sensitive, this throttle, you've got to be really careful. Just the tiniest nudge makes quite a big difference. But now we're doing 25 knots, 4,000 RPM, and we are burning 40 litres of fuel. So at that kind of speed, it's really not too greedy. Flat out doing 38, it's about 100 litres. But really what Windy are known for is the quality of their hulls. And hopefully we'll give you a chance to demonstrate that now. We'll bring it up to speed. Do 30 knots, and let's pop it into a hard port turn. Oh yes, that looks good, look at that. Really nice and tight, really gripping hard, not losing drive. And now we're going head into sea now. Really quite choppy, but it's riding beautifully too. It's really winding up. Okay, here we go. Now we're doing 38 knots. Oh yes, that just feels superb. Trim it in a bit. And let's go starboard turn. Oh, we got a nice wake coming up here. Let's see how it copes with this. Oh yes. Just superb. Flat out into the sea. Not a problem. Right, now it's flattening off a bit. We'll tuck the engine in. Let's go for a flat out starboard turn. Beautiful. And again to port for good measure. Oh, yes. Wow. That is really quite something. It's pretty much the perfect blend of a solid, rigid hull. It'll cut through the waves remarkably well. There's no banging, no slapping. Even if you get it a little bit wrong, it's extremely forgiving. And then when you pile it into a turn, you've got the perfect amount of grip. There's just a little bit of slide, but it's really consistent. And one of the things about these Windy hulls is they don't go in for stepped hulls. And it's often the stepped hulls where it can get a little bit tricky. If you push it in too hard or trim it up too much, you can get quite a sudden slide. But this feels utterly predictable, totally reassuring, and really solid. I'm super impressed by this. This is exactly what I would hope for from a Windy hull, and it delivers 100%. Now the starting price of this boat is £135,000 ex VAT, and that is with this single 300 horsepower Yamaha engine. But you can have, the alternative is to have two 200 horsepower engines. And actually that's only another £5,000 or so, because they are relatively cheaper than a single 300. So quite a lot more power. That should give you 45 to 50 knots, I would think, with that much more power. You also get this water sports bar as standard. You've got a hook there that you can attach your ski rope onto for water skiing or wakeboarding, whatever sport you're into. We've got a nice couple of bathing platforms either side of the engine. If you have the twin setup, then you do lose a little bit of space on these bathing platforms. They're obviously a little bit narrow to make room for the two engines. There is a little lift up hatch here. Not quite sure what that's for, but you can see there are access hatches into the bilges down there. And then we've got a reversible seat. So this seat here, you've got a reversible backrest. You can flip that over like so. And then obviously you can sit facing aft. It means you can keep an eye on somebody who is water skiing or wakeboarding. It's rather nice to have that option, but also just when you're sitting at anchor, it's rather lovely to be able to sit facing aft over the boat and enjoy the view in that direction. Very simple, just swings back over so that you're facing forward underway. Now either side of these two seats, we've got a couple of lockers. So you just pop that up, swivel it open, and then lift. And then got a really decent locker here. So there's room for a couple of fenders, and being windy, they've kitted it out really well. So you can see there is a lift out basket in here. That just makes it that much easier to get hold of things, keeps it all nice and tidy. And of course, being a mesh basket, it also drains, but you can keep your lines in there. It's got room for a couple of fenders. Very windy. It's all beautifully done, well thought out. And then there's a little stay there that keeps it upright. You just pull that open, close it down, and then shut it away. Now there is another one of those over on the other side, exactly the same. I won't show you that, but you can see just opens up and you've got another basket in there. Now the other thing I've noticed is that there is a useful little step here and that just stops the water coming up. So if you do get a wave coming in over the stern, that stops it coming up. And then if anything gets into the cockpit itself, there are also a couple of stainless steel drains down here, and you can see there are 2 draining holes there. So it is a completely self-draining deck. Just means if you do take any water on board, it very quickly finds its way out. Now, very sensible layout here. We've got this bench here with 2 forward-facing seats. We've got the 2 helm seats here, and then there's a table here. Now this table is permanently installed. It sits between the hard top mounting here. It's a folding top to it, so that folds out, gives you a bigger surface, and then these 2 helm seats also swivel round, so they can then face in towards the table. I'll demonstrate that very quickly. If I lift that up here, let me just find the handle. There we go. That just spins round, drops down, and then you can use the table this way. Now the one thing I have noticed is that these seats are a little bit higher on this side than that aft bench, so it is a little bit tight on the thighs, but nevertheless it means you do get to seat 4 people in a very sociable arrangement around the table. Now the other thing to notice while we're here, if you want to just come forward and have a look down here, you can see that we have got a fridge fitted under this aft bench and a socking great subwoofer for the stereo. So you've got all the entertainment, you've got drinks on board, and then there is a locker under here too. If I lift that up, we have got a locker in here. This is where the batteries are. Clearly they take up most of the space. There's also a switchboard there. I think those are just the electronics there, and of course a bilge pump to keep the boat nice and dry. But there is a little bit of extra storage in there if you need it. Close that up. Now, moving forward to the helm position, 2 really good bucket style seats. We've got bolsters on them down here, really good side supports, and actually this is one of those boats where it is perfectly comfortable both to sit and stand. So when you're sitting down, you've got good protection from this wraparound screen at the center console. The helm itself, really clean, very simple, easy to access everything. Got a Raymarine chart plotter with all your functions on there, so you can have all your speed and depth and everything relayed on that, as well as chart. There's lots of different options. You can choose exactly how you want it. You can have the full dashboard. You can have a full chart. You've got fish finder, everything. So that's up to you to set it up how you want. And then of course you've got the Yamaha controls over on this side. Useful little cup holder. We can see we've stuffed our handheld VHF in here. There's also a bow thruster. That is an optional extra, but very useful to have just to nudge the bow around when you want to. These are the zip weight controls. They're the automatic trim tabs, so you can have them set up automatically, or if you want to do it manually, then you've got side-to-side control and front and back trim. Yamaha throttle control, it is very sensitive, this, I have noticed it, and because it's one of these new electronic controls, it's very nice and smooth, but it is very sensitive. You've got to be quite careful. It's so easy just to add revs on, and there's nothing to stop you accidentally knocking it, so you do need to watch those. It's the same with all modern electronic throttles, but it does something that concerns me a little bit, how easy it is just to knock it into gear accidentally. Kill switch, traditional kill switch, you just wrap that around your leg, lock it back onto itself, and that will stop the engine if you do slip overboard or get thrown out of the seat. Over on this side, we've got buttons. Again, I like nice manual style buttons for all the key controls. Obviously, you've got the horn, you've got the navigation lights, and a tap for the water supply. And a fusion stereo, again, I think that is standard part of the boat. That's the controls for the Fusion stereo. And then moving around, it is a center console design, so you do have walk around decks on both sides. Again, I really like the fact that we've got good chunky hand grips all around here on both sides of the console, as well as this windscreen surround acts as a kind of support. On this one, we've also got the T-top fitted. Again, that just gives you more places to hang on to, and it's rather nice to see they put a couple of leather wraps just where you need them at this point here. So again, lots of good places to steady yourself as you move forward. Now the side decks themselves, you can see, really nice and deep. This comes up to pretty much hip height. And again, we've got rails around here, mid cleats, so you can set your springs when you come alongside. A couple of short steps up to the foredeck, but very easy to move forward. And then a really usable forward deck space. So quite often on boats like this, you just find that there's a sun pad up here. But I'm very pleased to see that this has much more than that. You've got a proper little bench here. And this is really valuable because the one thing I have noticed about the layout of the cockpit is that there's only really 4 or 5 forward-facing seats. You've got those 2 helm seats and then the bench across the back that you can probably fit 3 on at most. So on a calm day at least, it should be safe enough to have a couple of people sitting here. So it's not just a sunbed, but it does turn into one. And I'll demonstrate that in a minute, but you can see there's also seating around here. I don't think you want to go to be sitting this far forward while you're underway, but when you're at anchor or just on a mooring buoy as we are here, it's another really handy place to sit. If you want to have your picnic up here, it's actually almost more convivial and a bit more space than back in the aft cockpit. Now this table is height adjustable. Got a couple of manual screws under here, but that just goes up and down. You can see, just lift it up a bit, tighten it up, and then you've got a good little picnic table, for want of a better word. There's a couple of cup holders right forward here, and then the anchor locker itself. Again, really nice deep anchor locker and a properly custom-made windlass. So there is an electric windlass here and a little custom-made anchor that runs through the hull and fits very snugly around the bow. But you can see we've got the controls for the electronic windlass either side. You've got up, down, easy to operate with your feet or your hands. And then you've got a walk-through bow, again, very typically Scandinavian. They often like to moor bow to a little island, so being able to step off, or if you come onto the beach, you can step off the bow too. Now the other thing about having a height adjustable table is that you can drop the whole thing down. See if I might just demonstrate that. So that fits all the way down there, and then there are fill-in cushions that will sit on top of that and create a full-length sunbed here. So they just sit down below when they're not being used. When you want to bring them out, you can lay that out and create a sunbed there. I'm just going to tighten that up for the moment. And then exactly the same walk around side deck over on this side. Come back down. Now the other thing I should point out is that it has a single spoke Windy steering wheel, but there's also adjustment for the angle. So again, if you're standing up, you can have it more like a bus if you like, and then when you're sitting down, you can have it right down and have a proper sporty driving position. And the seats themselves, as well as swiveling and bolsters, there's also a sliding mechanism, so you can get as close or as far away from the wheel as you want to. It's a really well thought out driving position. And there's even a little bit of extra storage, I think, under here. There you go, you can see there's access to the fuel tank, but again, somewhere you can probably store 1 or 2 things if you need to. But more importantly, we've also got a cabin. Now, being a walk around boat, there's not a huge amount of space down here, but it's somewhere very handy to stow your kit. I've been stowing mine down there, so I'll just move that. But drop down into here. And there is an okay little cabin down here. You can see there's a bed stretching away under here. I have tried that out, it's perfectly long enough. It obviously tapers towards the bow because it's more pointed towards the bow, but it's perfectly comfortable. You could easily do a night on board here. There's a bit of natural light coming in through this window, LED strip light here, another one up here. And over on this side, there's just a little bit of extra storage. Again, not a great deal. Ooh, my sandwiches are still in there. But always useful to have a bit of extra dry storage and somewhere to put your bags if it's at all wet. And then in here, most importantly of all, there is a small heads compartment. Now, I say small because in all honesty, it is quite tight. There's certainly not standing headroom. You can see that here, but there's a useful little toilet. You can sit down here. Again, strip light in here. There is no natural light in here, so it's not the kind of place you're going to spend too much time, but nevertheless, on a day boat, it does mean you've got a day heads you can use, and of course, if you're overnighting, it's absolutely invaluable. There's a little sink in there. Don't think there's any more storage. It's just a fit for purpose heads compartment that means you don't have to buck it and chuck it. So, now it's not the easiest cabin to move around in. There is only standing headroom at the entrance here. But nevertheless, it is somewhere to tuck yourself away. So that is the Windy SR28 CC. Windy are very much about the driving experience, and I'm delighted to see that I think they've really nailed it with this boat. The hull is everything I hoped it would be in terms of performance, in terms of entertainment. It's grippy, it's very forgiving, it rides beautifully, and with the single engine we were getting 38 knots. If you want more power, of course you've got the option of those twin 200s. But I started off this review by saying 193,000 is quite a lot of money for a boat, but then again, it's not just an ordinary boat. If it lives up to the Windy characteristics, then that's fair enough. And I'm delighted to say that this one absolutely does. It's expensive, but for my money, it's worth every penny of it.